Hello, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls. In this video, I'm going to talk about 3D printing for artists. So, I basically did my bachelor's in mechanical engineering, but then I found that I'm more into art. So, I also practice art and I got a 3D printer. So, I've done a couple of projects. I thought it would be great to share some of my insights and what I do so that it would be helpful for an artist who is new to 3D printing who wants to use 3D printing in their artworks. All right. So this video is very raw and real. I don't really have a structure. I'll just speak whatever comes from my experience. All right. So right now I have this Ender, Creality Ender 2, sorry, Creality Ender 3 version 2, and this is 3D printing a nut right now for a mechanical kinetic sculpture which I'm printing. So I just wanted to let's begin by telling you how can you get started if you're an artist, if you are like a fine artist or a sculptor, and you just wanted to try out, how it's working and everything. So there are a couple of things that you must learn. One is there is a software known as Cura 5.0. It's a very easy software to use, especially at basic level. You can learn it from any YouTube channel. Secondly, you have to learn a 3D modeling software. Now there are plenty of 3D modeling softwares which are available on the market. You can check out Fusion 360. You can check out Blender. You can check out Rhino. There are a whole bunch of things. What I personally use is Fusion 360 because I'm coming from an engineering background. So Fusion 360 was a very natural choice because I even practiced Fusion 360 in my bachelor's. And for slicing, you need Cura. So what is slicing? Slicing, basically what slicing does is when you create a 3D model, slicing converts that 3D file into a G code for the 3D printer to understand what you're doing. Okay, so Fusion 360, it might take a little bit of time. It's one of the easiest 3D modeling softwares that you can learn. Okay, so when you learn these two softwares, which are not very hard to learn, to be honest. Uh, Another thing which you can do to get 3D models is use Thingiverse website. There are plenty of resources online. For example, one is Thingiverse, where you get free 3D models which you can directly download and put in your artworks. And apart from that, well, you gotta learn how to use the 3D printer itself. Now, it's not very hard again, but there are a couple of tricky things, especially in this FDM 3D printer. This one is FDM. This is fused deposition modeling. So, a couple of problems that you might face with this kind of printer is the bed leveling issue. Like, as I've been doing it for more than a year now, so I'm pretty experienced with that. But initially, you might find it a little irritating. But the but even this is not very hard, to be honest. And okay, so that was for the 3D printing part. A couple of books that I would recommend. There are a whole bunch of books which I personally read, but two books that I will recommend you that you should try. One is by Stephen Hoskins, 3D Printing for Artists, Designers, and Makers. This is like basically a classic. All right, you cannot proceed without reading this. This is going to be very helpful. The book covers the history of 3D printing, how it developed with respect to fine arts, and then it covers a whole bunch of case studies. The book also covers the future of 3D printing in arts. I personally think 3D printing is definitely going to revolutionize the art world. Uh, 3D printing is used for fashion designing. It's being used for. You should check out that video, that the 3D printed dress for some Tressa model. She's a beautiful woman. Okay, so well, that's one book. Another book that I would definitely recommend you is 3D Technology in Fine Arts and Craft. Again, this book essentially talks about milling process and 3D printing to used in art. So this is how two books which I would recommend. Definitely, there are a whole lot of other books that you might want to try, but these are the two books which I recommend personally. Just to show you a few demonstrations, I've created a few things. So this is a model which I got from Thingiverse. This is not my original design, guys. This is basically a kinetic sculpture. It has all kinds of mechanical parts inside it, all kinds of gears, gear train, and everything. And this was created entirely on 3D printing. And I've also applied some grease to it to add to the lubrication. So basically, what you do is just rotate this. I know it's not very clearly visible on the camera because the camera is not really good. From the next time, I'll try to improve the quality. But basically, there is a lever right here. So when you rotate this gear using the lever, this thing rotates and gives you a enchanting effect. So this is a kinetic sculpture which I printed. Some of the other things which I printed, just to give you an idea, it was a lithophane. In case you don't know what a lithophane is, basically you it basically has grooves in it, irregular surface, and what you can do is when you place it in front of a lightning source, the image is basically visible, which is currently not visible. But I just definitely recommend you try lithophane. Some of the other things which I tried is this kind of a futuristic design which I tried. So you can, and then I spray painted it with the red paint, so you can try that as well. Then this is one of my favorite things. This is basically a necklace, a bracelet, whatever you like to call it, and this was entirely 3D printed. That means even the smaller parts, they came together joined. I mean, I did not do the joining part. The 3D it by default was joined, so that is a very good thing. Another thing is this is a basically part of the human skeleton. This is a okay. I'll just show you like this. Yeah, this is the human foot, and then I applied some epoxy coating over it. So this also came out pretty good. You can use it for your art practice in case you are into sketching. And this is another 3D model which is a model of tRNA. So if you are into biology, if you want to create something inspired from biology or bio-inspired designs, you can try this one out. So this is basically the structure of tRNA, or component of cell. After making it, I put put acrylic coating over it, acrylic colors. So after 3D printing something, let's talk about post processing. Okay, so when you 3D print something, it is basically the surface finish may not be as you like it. It's basically very rough. So a couple of post processing techniques that you would want to try. Number one is sanding. Now there are two types of sanding. One is dry sanding and one is wet sanding. Dry sanding, you basically use 100 grit paper, 80 grit paper, or maybe even 120 grit paper. Just sand the part with that grit paper, and then there is wet sanding that you would want to do to get very fine finishing. So for wet sanding, what you do is you take 400 grit paper, even 1000 or 1500 or 2000 grit paper, which is you basically keep the sandpaper wet. After like a period of rubbing, you wet it out, and then you again rub, then you make it wet, then you again rub. That is for very fine finishing, so you would definitely want to try sanding. Another thing which you would want to try is putting a coating of primer and paint. Another thing that you want to try is epoxy. I personally like epoxy because it epoxy sticks pretty well to the PLA. uh, Basically the 3D print PLA is the material which I'm using. Epoxy, you can go for ceramic if you'd like, but ceramic in my experience did not stick well at all, so I would not recommend it. But for some experimental stuff, you can try ceramic also. uh, Apart from that, well, yeah, these are the kind of coatings which I use. I don't have any more ideas currently because that is all that I've used till now. Otherwise, if you are using conductive material like conductive PLA, you can try even electroplating it. Just imagine gold plating your 3D prints. That would be really awesome, I think. Um, so that is about post processing. Let's talk about the materials which are available for this FDM 3D printer. So material which I'm using, as I told you, is it is PLA. You can try ABS, you can buy PETG, you can buy TPA, you can buy nylon based polymers. There are a whole bunch of materials available. Some are depending upon your usage. So if you want a flexible print, you can go for TPA. ABS is available for strong prints. PL is also available. One good thing about PL is that it's biodegradable material, so you can also meet your sustainability goals if you're into that. I'm into that. I prefer this because this PL is basically made out of cornstarch. That is the important ingredient for this. And you can even reuse the material. So I prefer PLA. Like, I mean, there is a whole lot of science for the material thing, but I would just recommend it if you are starting out and you have a you just don't want to spend a lot of money. Just go with PLA. It is like one of the most popular and cheaper materials. Quality is pretty good. But among the downsides of PLA are, number one, very bad resistance to sunlight. It just starts to melt. Okay, it just starts to loosen up. That is a very bad thing. Another thing is the melting point. The melting point is pretty low, which is connected to the first point. I mean, the bed temperature which I'm using currently is 60 degrees Celsius for bed and 200 degrees Celsius for nozzle. So just imagine in 200 degrees Celsius it totally melts out. So the melting point is low for PLA. Well, I would say for the strength, ABS is going to be stronger than PLA. So if you are into like very strong models, you would prefer PLA. Sorry, ABS. Let's talk about the in-process parameters which I use. I basically use the triangular infill pattern. Infill pattern basically means, let me tell you this. For 3D printing, whatever you 3D print, let me just show you. For example, this I 3D printed this leg, for example. So this leg, this is not solid model, right? Whatever you 3D print, it rarely is solid from inside. From inside, usually it's hollow and made out of a mesh type of thing. You can call that is known as infill pattern. Basically, it's like a zigzag pattern within the 3D print. Uh, Infills are used so that you can 3D print something with least amount of material. All right, so that you get good strength for less amount of material. So basically infill pattern which I used, infill pattern, the settings you'll find in the Cura software itself. So infill pattern which I use is triangular. Usually I go with 20% infill because most of the models which I made, most of the artistic models that you will make, they don't really have to consider the strength. Artistic models are just show pieces, as I'm assuming. So I usually go for 20% infill pattern. That means even only 20% of the inner portion will be filled with 3D printed plastic, rest will be hollow, and the strength is fine. You won't really have a issue if your art model is just a showpiece. If it's a utility thing, then you might want to go for higher infill pattern like 80 or 100%. 100% basically means it's totally solid from inside. The downside of 100% infill is that it takes a lot more time to 3D print it, because just printing the entire thing solid will take a lot more material and time for the 3D printer to fill it. So there are a lot of things I can just talk on and on and on. There's just a lot of things. So this is what I wanted to initially talk about. If you want me to create more videos like this, just tell me about it. I'll create more videos with a better quality video quality. I mean, I just wanted to get started, so I just started recording it with a low quality camera. It was available to me immediately. But if you want, I can upgrade the quality in the future. So if you like this kind of content, just let me know down in the comments below so that I can upload more videos on the following. Thanks for watching.